Hey everybody, this is Steven from PopCultureMaven.com. We're back with this week's new comic book reviews. It's actually it's a small week, but this is a little bit bigger stack. So what has happened is there's a few books over the past few weeks that I've actually missed. One of them I actually missed two issues, but we'll get into that one. That's like one of the last ones. But so we'll kind of. Most of them are new. There is a few that were from previous weeks, so we'll I wanted to include them because I did miss them for whatever reason. Mostly I forgot to pick them up or I forgot to order them. You know how it goes. There's just so many comics that come out every week that you can't read everything. So we'll try to do a little catch up this week because it's a bit smaller week. So first up, we have Batman Fortress #1. Written by Gary Whitta, with artwork by Derek Robertson. So, once again, there's so few Batman books, it's nice that this one came out. So what this is a mini series, and it's good. It stands on its own. It doesn't connect to anything else. That's always a plus. So what it is there appears to be an alien invasion. And what it is they basically knock all the power out around the world. Of course, it's in Gotham. And so there's the after effect of the power going off. The fact that, the criminals like, free for all looting, crazy. Arkham Asylum has inadvertently the electronic locks that locked everybody in opened. And then before the backup could kick in, they all got out. So Batman now has to deal with the blackout, dealing with the Arkham inmates that have escaped, and Superman is nowhere to be found. Now him and Alfred, they contact the Justice League because he still has a satellite that works, kind of, and he's able to kind of do certain things. But it's most everything's knocked out: radios, cell phones, everything. So it's kind of an interesting setup. Now we don't know if they're aliens or whatever. We know it's some extraterrestrial something. So this issue's a lot of setup. I think it's interesting. I wouldn't say that the story itself is particularly original, but it was well paced for setting everything up. The real big win for this book is obviously Derek Robertson's artwork. He's just a really fantastic artist. He's done a lot of stuff over the years. Obviously, one of the biggest things he did was The Boys. Recently, he did Space Bastards, which was a personal favorite of mine. And he really works well here because it's one thing that works really great in this is because it's complete blackout. There's, he's able to really use the dark and ink and black and everything. And it really, really is a good looking book. I think it's an interesting story. I wouldn't say that it particularly overwhelmed me per se, because once again, it's a setup and the premise is pretty basic, but I think there's promise here, and if you're looking for kind of a standalone story with Batman, because there's so few Batman books on the stand, that this is actually a pretty good choice. So I think it's worth checking out this week. Next up, we have Fox and Hare #1, written by John Suey, with artwork by Stacy Lee. So what this is, it's two orphans. Asian orphans that grew up, and now so what they do is they now protect kids and stuff like that. So but there's also kind of a bigger thing in the fact that there's a kind of a corporate, mafia sort of thing running the city. So they get involved. Well, they go to this factory that it's supposedly closed, but it's not, and because there's some kidnapped kids there, so they want to go rescue the kids. But there's one kid that's trying to hack into the computer system because supposedly this place is defunct, but it's not really quite defunct. So now they have this kid that they have to. So they learn, hey, there's something going on behind the scenes. And that's kind of the basic setup here for this first issue. I think it was interesting. I mean, whenever you get books from like smaller companies like Vault, like this one, it's always kind of a crapshoot. So I wouldn't say that I was particularly overwhelmed with the book, but it was way above average for a Vault title. I think there's some interesting ideas here. I wouldn't say they're particularly original, but I think there's some decent ones. The art by Lee is actually really nice. It's a good looking book, and I think it shows promise. Like I said, it's not something that was overwhelming, but I think it's kind of like, okay, we'll see what the second issue brings. Being a light week, it might be something you might want to check out. But like I said, just temper your expectations on that one. I like I said, it's not going to blow you away, but I think there's some promise there. Next up, we have Sandman Universe Nightmare Country #2, written by James Tynion IV, with artwork by Lisandro Etherin. And the dreaming sequences in this issue are drawn by Andrea Sorrentino. So, once again, this came out, like, I think 2 weeks back, so I'm really a little bit behind on this. But I really enjoyed the first issue. I think it's really, really interesting how Tynion is it's part of the Sandman universe, but basically you have the Nightmare who has come to this world because there's a girl who sees some sort of smiling figure, and yet she's not dreaming it. She sees it while she's awake. So Nightmare is actually really intrigued by this, and he wants to find out, hey, what's going on? And so it's interesting because there's also what I like about this book is how when so in this case he's called back to the dreaming, it's drawn, that part is drawn by Sorrentino. So it's kind of interesting, and Yannick Paquette did that in the first issue. So I like how they're getting different artists to draw, like when kind of the flashbacks or when they go to the dreaming, or it has something to do with that side. I think it's interesting, but the story itself is really, really good. I'm a big Sandman fan, and that first set of books that came out from the Sandman universe were okay, but I don't think any of them really quite captured where I think Tynion really kind of gets it, because it's part of the universe, but it really strikes out on its own, which when the Sandman was going, there was like the books of magic and stuff like that really did strike out on its own, but understood where the universe, how it all fits together. And he really has just done a fantastic job here. I also like the fact that Nightmare is kind of like intrigued by, like, because usually his whole thing is like, messing with people and all that kind of stuff in their dreams. And yet here's somebody who's having like real nightmares, but it's not in his world. So I think that's, when we learn that in this issue, I think it really changed the ball game for like where this story can really go. And Esterin's story artwork is just really, really wonderful. I like the style that it has. It really just has a unique look and feel, which I think really benefits it. It makes it really stand out. And it's just really a wonderful book. And like I said, I know I was a little disappointed with some of the Sandman universe when they kind of did that reboot a few years back. But I think this is really, really a good book, and I think you should really check it out. Next up, we have The Naughty List #2, written by Nick Santora, with artwork by Lee Ferguson. So once again, this is the Santa Claus story, but it's kind of like, I guess you could say it's almost before he's Santa Claus, or he's early Santa Claus. He's not jolly and fat yet. So what has happened in the last issue, we find out that the naughty list is there's a machine that generates the naughty list, and the naughty list was actually stolen. So now he's with one of the elves, and they're trying to get it back. So their first stop is going to the racetrack, where they find out that one of his reindeer, who he retired, is now racing at the horse track, and so he's kind of pissed about that. So, but he's basically trying to find the naughty machine, because he can't do the Santa Claus thing, with the naughty and nice, naughty list, he needs a nice list, so he knows who to make toys for and who to give a lump of coal to. So that's kind of what we see in this issue. It's kind of like, now we kind of gotten to the detective part of this story. And like I said, I generally kind of like this because it's really a different take on the mythology of Santa Claus, and I think it's really because in a lot of ways he's kind of a jerk, and I like the fact that it's not what you expect, which is really Centaurus really built up really quite well in this story. Ferguson's artwork's actually really nice. It's a good looking book. I think it's well worth checking out only because it's something that but it really just kind of takes it, kind of looks at it at a different angle, and I really like that. Next up, we have The Amazing Spider-Man #2, written by Zeb Wells, with artwork with pencils by John Romita Jr. and inks by Scott Hanna. So I actually, I haven't really read a Spider-Man book in quite a while, and so I'm like, okay, I'll give this a try, even though I'll be the first to admit I'm not John Romita Jr.'s. He's not my favorite artist. I think he is a good penciler, but he's a penciler that needs a really strong inker. So with that being said, I've actually kind of enjoyed this, and I think what makes it kind of interesting is that it really seems to, it's striking its own continuity, which is probably a good thing. Now we know that this is like Spider-Man, or Peter disappeared for 6 months, so this is 6 months later, so things are different, but it's kind of interesting. Like, one of the really interesting things in this story is Norman Osborn hires Peter Parker to babysit his kids, and you're just like, okay, it's like, you're not going to kill him, or you're not setting him up. No, just babysit the kids. And so there's things like that. And so also now, because Peter's broke, and, and Spider-Man's not, I mean, people know who Spider-Man is, but he's been gone, and everybody's kind of like, Spider-Man. And so there's also the mafia war that's going on within, kind of the mob. And so, Tombstone is basically kind of becoming the head of the mob, and he's basically like, if you're not with me, you're against me, and I'll just take you out. And so that's what we're kind of dealing with this issue. And at the end of this issue, Spider-Man's in a pretty bad pickle. So Zeb Wells is, Wells is writing a pretty fun script here. I think the fact that it just kind of stands on its own, and just is kind of a fresh, it's not like the most mind-blowing story you'll ever read. I think it's just kind of fun. I think that's the one thing that he's really picked up on, kind of the fun aspect. And also kind of the off-kilter of Peter, and how he's trying to deal with coming back by being gone 6 months, and things have changed. And so that's kind of interesting. So with the artwork, once again, I'm not necessarily, I wouldn't say this is my favorite Romita artwork. I think he did a bit better job when he was doing Superman at DC. He had a really good inker. I think it was Dan Green was inking him, and really inked him. Hannah's doing a decent job of inking him, but I just, there's times where it's just kind of like a little bland. But I will say that it's not as sketchy as it normally is. He tends to have a lot of sketchiness to his artwork, and that's not present here. So I'm happy in that respect. Overall, I think it's a pretty fun book. Like I said, the artwork's not blowing me away, but it's not turning me off, which for me and John Romita Jr. is a big win for that book. Next up, we have Image 30th Anniversary Anthology. So we're going to go through this really quick because there's a ton of stories. So we have the first one, The Blizzard by Jeff Johns and Andrea Mutai. Ice Cream Man by W. Maxwell Print and Martin Marazzo. Gospel for a New Century by Wyatt Kennedy and Luna Vecchio. Kaya by Wes Craig. G-Man by Chris Garuso. Stupid Fresh Mess by Scotty Young. Hopeless by Mirka Andolfo, Shara DeFranca, and Fabia Amila. Red Stitches by Brandon Fletcher and Erica Henderson. Shift by Kyle Higgins, Daniel Danuco, Walter Belamonte. Jenna by Patrick Kilton, Mario Rosenwig, and Jim Campbell, and then Billy Dogma by Dean Haspel. So I actually liked a lot of the stories in the first issue. Now, so a lot of these are running. Some of them are running for all 12 issues. Some of them are running. Some of them, we've got part 2 and 3, part 2 and 4. So they're kind of so. There's gonna so basically right now the Blizzard's gonna run for 12 issues. Stupid Fresh Mess is gonna run for 12, and Billy Dogma is gonna run for 12. And Red Stitches is gonna also run for 12. So the rest of them are either single, like the Ice Cream Man is a single, G-Man's a single. So you really get kind of a cross section. Of course, I will say, being that the monthly, the only bit of a downside is because there's so many stories, it's a little hard to keep track of what has happened. So that's going to be a little tougher. I guess really kind of the bigger question is, when this is done, will this be kind of collected in a giant set, which would be nice because then you would get them all, or I don't know if they'll be collected individual. But just be forewarned, that is a little bit of an issue with that because of the amount of stories that are going on. So I'll just kind of go through the ones that I'm really digging right now. I really like the Blizzard by Johns and Mutai. That one's a really interesting story. I like how it's a nice little horror story. The Ice Cream Man one was really bizarre, but if you've the good thing is if you've read Ice Cream Man, then you'll know kind of what you're getting into. But I think it's also, if you haven't read Ice Cream Man, this will kind of tell you like how weird it is. It's weirdly amazing. It's very strange, but very I think it's really intriguing. The Gospel for a New Century by Kennedy and Vecchio is really strange, but I really love the artwork in it, and it really just it's really intriguing. It's kind of like two demons who's basically gunning down or taking out evil people, and it's really intriguing. I really like that. Kai is one of my favorites. The Wes Craig, it's just, he's writing and drawing it. It's a really intriguing story. It's about a loner and a prince, and they're like friends, and it's just really intriguing, and I love the artwork. I love the artwork. The G-Man story was a lot of fun. That's a standalone. The Scotty Young is basically like it's like a daily strip. It's like X amount of panels. They're just gag jokes. The Hopeless by Andolfo and it's her writing and drawing. That one's really intriguing. I think it's got a lot of promise, but that's one of those ones it's going to be a little hard to kind of keep track of everything. The other one that I really like is the Gianna by Patrick Kilden and Maurizo Rosenwig. That one's really interesting, and I like that it's in black and white. That's another thing. It really very striking. It's about a hit woman that's supposed to kill this kid, but she doesn't want to kill the kid, and it's really intriguing. And then the one page Dan Haspel is going to be. He's going to be there for all 12, but each issue's one page. So that one's going to be tough, but I do like it. But once again, one page every month is going to be tough. I think it's a really, once again, it's a great package. The price is really good. It's let's see, it's it's $6 for a lot of stories, and there's some that don't necessarily overwhelm me. Any that I didn't mention, I didn't hate. I like them all. I just think there's some that are becoming more favorites, but that doesn't mean that something might not turn around in like the third or fourth issue with it's part of the story. So I think it's a good deal. I think it might be worth kind of waiting and picking up, but reading it by each issue is a bit tough in the sense of you're only getting a little bit of the story. So that's the only forewarning, but I do recommend it. Next up, we have Bloodstained Teeth, number 2, written by Christian Ward with artwork by Patrick Reynolds. So what the story is there's if a vampire turns a human, they're kind of like second class vampire citizens. So what it is the head, basically the head vampire committee has told him you can't do this anymore, and now you have to go back and basically not make them vampires anymore. So and if you don't, we're going to kill you. I think they might want to kill him anyways, but so basically now he has to go back. And so the first one is actually like MMA fighter. And so it's really, I won't spoil how he tricks him into submission, but it's really interesting. So the Wards, I think the story's interesting. I won't say that I've been blown away, but I'm intrigued by the concept. And the second issue does build nicely on the first issue. Like I said, I wouldn't say that it's overwhelming, but I'm enjoying it. Reynolds' artwork's really nice, and I really like the kinetic energy of the artwork, and then the color work by Heather Moore is really good. It's really, I mean, like I said, the artwork has a really kinetic feel, but it's really the coloring that she does that really makes that artwork pop in the story. Like I said, I'm finding it intriguing. There's been a lot of vampire stories lately, but I think this does have a different kind of hook, which I do like. So I still think it's worth checking out. Next up, we have Batman Beyond the White Knight, number 3, written and drawn by Sean Murphy. So once again, this is kind of a continuation of the White Knight universe. So Bruce is broken out of prison, and so it's kind of like it's not that he's imagining the Joker, because the Joker's dead. Sorry, spoiler, but it was in one of the previous miniseries. So, but what it is he placed like a computer chip. So it's like it's like an internal hologram, but it's actually kind of like a little computer of the Joker. So he ends up kind of like, talking in his head, but Bruce can see him. And so it's really interesting. And I think the one thing that I really like, and once again, there's virtually no Batman books, but what Murphy does is really, it's the dialogue that I love. I mean, I love his artwork and everything, but I really love, especially this issue, there's some just rich dialogue, especially between Bruce and the Joker. It's just absolutely amazing. And so what it is the GTO is basically like turned Gotham into like a police state. Now the Gotham PD is still there, but they're not really running the show. GTO is running the show. And so what Commissioner Barbara Gordon is going to do is she's trying to unravel all of that. And also Bruce is trying to unravel, but we also got Terry McGinnis, who has the Batman Beyond suit. So that's all going on, and so we find out that, in a bit of a spoiler, I'm letting you know, this is a bit of a spoiler, that Bruce had married Harley Quinn. Now, the two kids are the Joker's kids, but Bruce had married Harley. So she's now she's involved. We don't know how involved she's going to be. I'm guessing she's kind of pissed at Bruce, so I think it's going to be quite interesting down the road here in this story. But it's all there's a lot. We have one of the GTO guys that's pissed, and he actually quit there, so he wants to join the Gotham PD. But Barbara has given him a new role, which I will not spoil. It's interesting. And so yeah, it's really interesting. And once again, Murphy's just knocking out both with story and art. And if you haven't read these White Knights, I really recommend. Once again, I think you can read this on its own. There is some continuity things from the previous, but I don't think there's anything fatal that Murphy, if there's something you need to know, he does explain it. So that's good. But definitely anything by Sean Murphy is must buy books. Next up, we have the Hulk #7, written by Donny Cates with artwork by Martin Ciccolio. So this is part 3 of the Banner of War. So what it is so if you haven't been reading either of these books, now there was a special that with the first part did tell you what was going on. So Hulk is basically a kaiju. Thor is now taking the place of his father Odin, but Odin kind of inhabits the hammer. So there's that going on. But then the last issue, Tony Stark decides he's going to take care of the Hulk because, he's like, this is bad. He's like a kaiju. And so he has this, then he has, it's like Pacific Rim. He's the robot guy. He goes after the Hulk. It does not go well because now Hulk has he's like on nuclear, it's like Spinal Tap. He's now on 11 all the time. And so Tony gets the crap kicked out of him. And then Odin basically tries to stop him, the hammer. That doesn't work. And then there's a huge twist at the end that I will not give away, but it's like changes the course of this team up. Now, I will say the past few parts of this, I have not been overwhelmed because they were just giant battles. Now, this one does have the giant battle, or there's giant battles, but I will say that I think there's some great twists and turns that finally really makes this into, oh, okay, this is kind of intriguing, where it's not just them beating the snot out of each other every part. So I will give Kate that I think the story moves along. I don't know that we should have waited for 3 parts of it, but it's finally, for me at least, is kind of kicking into gear. Ciccolio's artwork, he's doing a really great job. This is the third part that he's done, so he's really doing a wonderful job on the book, and so I think I can actually say I think it's worth checking out. I'm starting to enjoy it now that we've kind of gotten most of the battles, that there's now some meat on the bone to the story for me. Next up, we have the Swamp Thing #13, written by Ram V, with artwork by Mike Perkins. So Levi has now been brought out of the green world, but he's kind of discovered that the basically the evil bad guy is kind of he's running a factory where it's hard to explain because there's so much before this, but I won't go into too much detail because it's very hard to explain the story in this issue without explaining the previous 12 issues of story. But I will say this, that Ram V is really knocking it out of the park on the story. Once again, you do not jump into this book. There's a trade of the first 12 issues of the part 1. This is part, the second season of the book. It's just really wonderful. I love how he really has captured Swamp Thing in a great way, in the sense of he's understanding the Len Wein, Bernie Wrightson period. He understands the Alan Moore. He's also taking into the Rick Vetch mythology in sense of he knows he has done his homework to do this book, and that's why it is so good. And then you've got Mike Perkins just knocking it out of the park with the artwork, which is just stunning here. I'm really enjoying this book. There's so many twists and turns. The green is really coming into the story, and there's a nice twist at the end. I will say certain let's just say it. Green Lantern shows up, and it's going to be interesting to see, because this is really the first we've seen where, we know he's in the DC universe, but there's something that happens at the end of this issue that, okay, there's something else going on beyond what has gone on before with Levi. So I'll leave it there, but I will say you really need to catch up and be reading this book. If not, definitely wait. There'll be a trade of this one. Just read it. This is really good. Ram is just knocking out of the park on this book. Next up, we have The Punisher #3, written by Jason Aaron, with artwork by Jesus Saez and Paul Acita. So once again, the Punisher is Frank is running the Hand clan, and so what's interesting, what I like about it is you have the current thing, and then there's these flashbacks of Frank as a kid, and the kind of the priestess, or the kind of the Merlin of the Hand clan, is basically saying, Frank has always been the Punisher. This is nothing new. And what I love about it, it kind of, not so much it's really telling the origin of Frank, but it really, it kind of is, but it's not like, oh, here's how he became the Punisher. It's just really saying that he's always been the Punisher, and that these things, it's not just what happened at the park with his family, that this stuff has been burned into his DNA from day one. And I find that really intriguing. I really have to give Aaron credit for that, because the main, kind of the current, the him as the leader is interesting, but throwing these flashbacks to his past really just adds a great richness to the story, and it's quite intriguing. And now Saez is doing so this is what I believe, that Saez is doing the current with Zetia doing the flashbacks. That's what I've done a little research, and that's what it appears to be. And I do like that they're two completely different styles. I think that's actually really good, and I love both of the artworks. And I'm really intrigued with where Aaron's going to go, at least with this first storyline. So I definitely think it's worth checking out. Now, the next couple books are going to be stuff that came out like within the last couple weeks. One of them's a little later. We'll get to that one last. So next up, we have Crossover #13, written by Donny Cates and Jeff Shaw. So this wraps up kind of the first storyline in a way. Now, it doesn't end the story, but it does put it puts an end to the first story arc. That's really the best way to put it. And it really opens up where, kind of the two different worlds, kind of the real world that they're in, and then there's the comic book universe that they've come from, and how they're just kind of shoved together, thrown in a blender, and just messed up at this point. And it is really interesting, because what we now learn is that Donny Cates, who wrote the story, is now, it's kind of like his final chapter of him. But yet he's saying that it's not like the story won't end just with him, that it's the artist, the colorist, the letter. So even if he gets killed, it will not be the end. So that's an intriguing thing. And so, like I said, there's a nice, great twist at the end of this first story arc. And like I said, I've really enjoyed this, how he's used a lot of independent characters, Madman, Powers, and how he's all just thrown this in, like it's a giant blender of like indie comics. Even Negan from The Walking Dead's been in it, and it's really just been a really spectacular book so far. And I really have to give Jeff Shaw a big shout out on this book. He's really just knocking it out of the park with the artwork. It's a really good looking book. It's really an intriguing story. If you haven't checked it out, there's going to be a trade of this second story arc, so you'll be able to catch up. In a few months, there's a 3D special that's going to have a new story. So I really recommend. I've really enjoyed this book so far, and it'll be really interesting when the next season of the book starts. So finally, this week we have like I said, this was really backed up, and I really wanted to mention it. So we have Black Hammer Reborn #11 and Black Hammer Reborn #12. So this finishes this particular story. This finishes Lucy's story for Black Hammer, but it does not finish the story. I will say I knew this going in, that this is leading up to the final the Black Hammer story, which is going to be Black Hammer the End. Now Lemire has already said this publicly, that he is ending the main series, but that doesn't mean that there will never ever be any more Black Hammers after that. It's just that right now this is going to finish the Black Hammer stories for now. And down the road he may do more. He may do miniseries. He doesn't know, but he's kind of wanting to wrap up the main storyline, and he's doing that here. So these two issues really finish the Lucy Black Hammer family story, but I don't think that is where their story. I don't think Lucy's gonna. I think even though she says that she wants to not be involved anymore, I think there's a possibility, but we don't know yet. But I will say that Lemire has just knocked it out of the park. I love it. I love that in a lot of ways the story does end, but it's open, because once it ends, it's leading into. But it does finish Lucy's family story, and it does at least tie that up well, which is good. And I really have to give it to Caitlin Yarsky. She's really done it. She did a wonderful job on this book. It looks great. And these last couple issues were really spectacular, especially issue 11 was very, very intriguing, very interesting, because it ties back into the farm story. It was actually really nice and emotional. And so it also goes back to their story and how they ended up back at the farm. And so that's a nice explanation of that. And then, like I said, you kind of see with the 12th issue where it's leading in. It's going to lead up to the final chapter of this current storyline of the main Black Hammer books. I'm a huge Black Hammer fan. There is going to be a trade of this. You can honestly buy any of the Black Hammer stuff. I do recommend starting at the beginning, but it's a really great universe that Lemire has created here, and it's really worth checking out. So that's going to do it this week. Thanks for watching. As always, public service announcement. I get all my comics at Pulp Fiction Comics, Long Beach, California. Ryan runs a great store. Annie, Eduardo, and Wendy and Derek, the whole gang there, just really spectacular. It's a great store in Southern California. Check it out. And they do have there's a sister store, same name, Pulp Fiction Culver City. Now it's run by Chris, separate owner, but same name. And that's a really great store in the more of the LA area, and check it out. They both offer great discounts on trades and hardcovers and manga. They have a great pull service. They give discounts if you set up a pull box account with them. They're really great stores, and really, even if you don't live in the LA area, just support your local comic shop. It's really, really important. They're a small business, and every bit helps. And make sure, if you have a pull, pick up your books, folks. Don't let it pile up, because they have to pay for them before you get them. So just make sure you do that. And as always, we end our show with be kind. Things are really tough out there right now. There's been a lot of, I'm not going to get into it, but there's been a lot of bad news lately out there. And, we just need to, we need to start being more kind to each other. We need to set our differences aside and, just be kind. Things are rough. We don't need to make them rougher. There are things that we cannot control, individually, but I can tell you one thing: being kind to someone, or to everyone, really is a good thing. So please be kind to each other out there. Take care. And once again, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves, people. And this is Steven from popculturemaven.com signing out. Please be kind, folks. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you again next week. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.